6:07 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome on in. And along with Johnny B, Ken Weaver, Dan Mandis here. Indeed, want to say good morning to Hans von Spakovsky, of course, former member of the Federal Election Commission, senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, expert in election law, and our guest this morning. Hans, always great to have you on, regardless of the topic. And this morning, going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Georgia, Fulton County, Georgia, the indictments coming down against former President Donald Trump. Now, you have read the entire indictment. So, give me the upshot on how you feel this indictment is going to play out against Donald Trump and the 18 others.
Well, let me make 2 points about it. One, I think this is one of the most outrageous abuses of the law I've ever seen. And I've been a lawyer for almost 4 decades. In fact, I'm licensed to practice law in Georgia, and I used to be a county election official in Fulton County.
Wow.
And I can tell you, this is a weaponization of the law, and it's a partisan witch hunt against Donald Trump and the 18 other defendants in the case. On the other hand, Fani Willis, the DA, is a politically ambitious, unethical prosecutor, and she has filed this case in a county that is overwhelmingly Democratic, voted overwhelmingly for Biden in the last elections, and I have no doubt she believes that she can convict these defendants no matter what the facts are, no matter what the law is, and that she's counting on that.
Well, Fulton County, 73% voted for Joe Biden. And so you're right, it is heavily blue. And so let's talk a little bit about what's in the indictment, because, they go after Donald Trump for tweets. They go after Donald Trump for, things that he said. And it seems to me that a lot of everything in this indictment from Donald Trump, he is literally trying to clarify what was going on in Fulton County and in Georgia. It doesn't seem like he's, to me, and I listened to the phone call as well, although the phone call is not within the indictment, but it just seems like there's a clarification or an attempt to clarify what happened, because there was a lot of irregularities that the president didn't understand, still doesn't understand.
Well, in fact, Dan, that gets to the crux of the problem with this lawsuit. It is one of the most fundamental attacks on the First Amendment I've ever seen by a local prosecutor. And what I mean by that is, look, if you go through her 100-page indictment, she lists something like 160 acts, she calls them, that she claims were all part of it, were all unlawful and therefore part of this criminal conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. But all of the acts that she lists are things fully protected by the First Amendment. I mean, the first thing she lists as being illegal is the public speech, nationally televised, that Donald Trump gave on November 4th, 2020, in which he said, no, I won this election. And then she goes through and she lists all these public tweets as supposedly illegal actions. Probably the most laughable one is in December 2020. Trump put out tweets urging people to vote, to watch the publicly televised hearings that were being held by who? The Georgia legislature, to investigate what had happened in the election. That, she says, was an unlawful act in furtherance of a conspiracy. That is one of the most ridiculous claims I have ever heard. She also, in addition to all these public speeches, which are fully protected under the freedom to speak of the First Amendment, she also says they engaged in illegal behavior, she and the other defendants, when they talked to state legislators and others trying to persuade them that the election had been stolen, and therefore they should send an alternate slate of electors, Trump electors, to Congress. Again, everybody knows, well, he doesn't apparently know, that the First Amendment protects freedom of speech. But remember, the other right protected in the First Amendment is the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. That means that every conversation, public or private, that they had with state officials to redress their grievance was they thought the election was stolen. Again, that's fully protected under the First Amendment. I mean, I cannot believe that someone would file an action like this until you find out that her father was also a lawyer and a member of, guess what, the Black Panthers.
Yes.
So she is a radical leftist who I think is using this. Remember, before this, who was she? An obscure, unknown local prosecutor. This is her ticket to national prominence with the Democratic Party.
But see, here's the thing, Hans, and Hans von Spakovsky is joining us. I mean, I've read and listened to you and many other great legal minds, and, you know, the consensus is clear that this thing is just not credible, this indictment. But is there a worry that in Georgia, in Fulton County, that the president, there are a couple of things may happen. One, you've got all of these 18 other people that are charged, and then you have Donald Trump, of course. And so I see a couple of things happening. Number one is they're going to try to get some of these 18 to flip and drop a dime on Trump. That's number one. And number two, is there anything in this indictment that will actually stick and they could see some sort of a conviction?
Well, look, all of this is total nonsense with just one or two exceptions. She makes a claim in there that they somehow tried to influence a witness. Even that description, which is illegal, trying to intimidate a witness. But even the description of that is really weird. They're talking about someone who was an election worker, and she was in the infamous State Farm arena, right, where they were supposedly counting absentee ballots, and there are allegations that things were done wrong. And so some of these defendants tried to talk to her. And what this indictment says is they wanted to talk to her to offer to help her. That's what it says, to help her, but that this witness was scared by the fact that the defendant who tried to talk to her was, quote unquote, a white man.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you.
Oh.
That is the claim, which is such a bizarre claim that clearly we need to find out what really happened there, not what the grand jury indictment's fantasy recitation is of the facts. The other claim that's in there is that somehow some of these defendants broke a law about accessing voting equipment in one particular Coffee County. But look, even if that's true, then the only people you should be able to charge with that are the folks who actually went to Coffee County and did that. Instead, Willis is trying to say that everybody else, all the other defendants, even if they had no participation in that, didn't know anything about it, why they're guilty of that too.
I think the more that we learn what is in these indictments, of course, we know this went in front of a grand jury, and this is Fulton County, and so there's no cross-examination or anything. It's just, here's what we have, and is it enough to indict? Now, one of the more peculiar things that happened was there was some documents. I don't know if they were indictments or what you call them, but they were posted to the clerk's website there in Fulton County. And it was the most bizarre thing because it makes it seem like even before the grand jury took their vote, you had the office and the clerks, they had this all written up and even posted up onto their website. and it gives, sort of an indication that there really wasn't any due process. And this whole thing was just all set and good to go. And they were all ready. And the vote itself was actually just a formality. How big of a deal is that the document that was accidentally posted, they say, to the clerk's website turned out to match what was actually the president and the 18 others were indicted with?
Oh, I think that shows the bias of the grand jury and the fact that they simply rubber stamped what Fani Willis did. And keep in mind, remember some months ago, I mean, to tell you how nutty the members of this grand jury are, remember how one of the women on the grand jury started giving interviews to people like MSNBC and elsewhere, and she was laughing about the work of the grand jury, and was talking about how cool it was that they got to haul all these famous people in front of the grand jury. That's how unseriously the members of this grand jury took this entire case. And that's just another sign of the ethical issues with Fani Willis. Let's not forget, she already was cited for unethical behavior in this investigation. Why? Because she targeted a Republican state senator with her grand jury investigation who was running for lieutenant governor of the state. And then, as soon as she publicly announced that she was targeting him as a possible defendant of the grand jury, what does she do? She goes out and holds a fundraiser for the Democratic candidate who was running against the Republican senator.
Well, that just shows you the kind of frankly, the kind of person she is. There's not a lot of ethics there. And, I'm trying to figure out, is she incompetent? Because we're going back to the First Amendment issues here. And, it's my contention, it's always been, that the president has every right to defend himself, utilizing his free speech, and he does have every right to, petition the government. And so, but my question is, so is she just incompetent, or is this something where everybody knows what she's doing? She knows what she's doing, but she's just going to go ahead and do it anyway because this is Fulton County. This is her county. She's in with the judges in the county as well. They know that the media is going to work with them as well, by and large. And so she's just going to do it. Is she a bad attorney, or is she, frankly, corrupt?
Oh, I think she's corrupt. I think the members of the grand jury, frankly, were idiots, that they didn't realize that all these incidents they claim were illegal were protected by the First Amendment. No, I think she's corrupt. In fact, I published an article about this last night in which I say that she reminds me of the former local DA in North Carolina. Remember, this is about 10 years ago, Mike Nifong. He's the guy who tried to prosecute a case against the members of the Duke lacrosse team for a supposed gang rape that happened at a party. It was all false. The woman just made up these charges. It was all fabricated, and he knew that. He knew it. But he pursued the case anyway because he thought it would give him a boost in the election for district attorney that was coming up. That was all eventually found out, and the State Bar Association disbarred him for his unethical, unprofessional behavior. I think Fani Willis is just another Mike Nifong.
So where does this go? We've only got a minute left. So do you have any predictions as to, what's going to happen with this case? It's going to go in front of a jury. The former president will be, convicted of a count. It'll lose on appeal. What do you think is going to happen next? Do you have any predictions?
Oh, I think you just described it. I think most or all of these defendants will get convicted, even though they shouldn't. And I think what they're going to have to do is appeal the decisions. Frankly, I think if that happens, Brian Kemp ought to consider, that's the governor issuing pardons to all of them. And I think, frankly, the legislature needs to come in and take budgetary actions. Remember, they control the purse.
Yep.
Against Fannie Willis and her office. They need to go after her.
And we'll leave it there, but great analysis, Hans von Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us here on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7.